Hello, I'm Ben Simmons. Welcome to my shop. I'm here with Mel Bryan today, and we're going to be talking about finish and color. Now, we won't be exploring everything about finish and color, but we're going to give you some ideas and tips that may lead you in some interesting different directions. Now, I hear from a lot of turners and a lot of woodworkers that, well, I don't like to mess with color, and you should go with just the natural wood and let it shine through. And a lot of times I agree with that. Wood is beautiful. It looks good, it feels good, it's attention getting, but every once in a while we find ways to accent what we're doing or change the look of things that really get people's attention and say, oh, what happened there? Or how did you do that? Or that's what I want in my home. So let me show you real quickly. This is a piece of pecan. Very nice. I accented the grain in this piece of pecan. This is a piece of pecan from exactly the same log. This is the other end of the log. This one has a lot of the red color added on top of the grain that was added with this one. And so what you get is a very different effect from the same wood by using different technique, different approach to what's going on. This one finished very simply with a polish and wax type of finish. This one, lacquer added to give it that shine and that depth. I like them both. I like to look at them, I like to handle them, they feel good, but I will tell you that if you are in the business of selling some of your stuff occasionally and people walk in and they see those two vessels together, this is the one they're going to go for first. This is the one that gets their attention. So why use color? Maybe it's just to accent the rest of your work, to make everything else look good. And you can say, oh, well, why did you do that horrible thing to that piece of wood? Well, I did that because this is the ugly sister and I wanted everybody else to look beautiful. Well, okay. So where are we going with this? Let me show you a couple of more. These are ash bowls that were turned green. You can see that we're getting the distortion on the rims. I really like this. This is great. They're turned very, very thin. And while they were still green, I added leather dye, red and black. And then the next day after the leather dye had dried, I added some lacquer, and they've been fine ever since. No waiting, no storing them away for a few months to wait to turn them down again. This was all done in a single day session with the finish being added the next day. You need a nut bowl. This is a good nut bowl. A little candy dish, an accent, something that you want to give the neighbor with some peppermints in. Those peppermints look pretty good on that red. And we can go from there. I was playing with some other colors that come in this little test kit. And this is poplar. And I was using it just for testing what different colors can do. And this is applying different colors and blending them with sponge. And then just finishing it up with a very simple shellac type finish. The shine juice, if you will. I like it. Again, you hand this to people and you say, oh, it's just a poplar bowl. No, it's not. That color really changes the nature of the poplar and lets the character of the wood come through pretty strongly. It's pretty. I like it. Well, I was working with some white oak. And if anybody works with white oak, you know it can be pretty cantankerous stuff sometimes, but it's absolutely gorgeous. And so the white oak vessel that I got is this. It's a nice little hollow form. It turned out nicely. I like this a lot. But I had half of a log left over. I said, well, what can I do with that other half of the log? Do I want a copy of this one as a big brother or a little sister or something like that? Or am I going to make it look completely different? This is the other half of the log. This is the same log, same white oak, but with color added. Now, is one right and one wrong? I don't think so. And if you set these two together, people would never know that they came from the same log, but you really have something different to put up on your shelf or to put on your sale table. What's going to get somebody's attention first? Well, maybe a purist, but that red is something else. I did some ash bowls. Little hollow turning. This is just the slab of the 2-inch ash that I chopped off, cut off the corners, put on the lathe one day to play with to see what kind of effect that I could get with some of my little test colors. And using the warm colors and the honey and the ambers and the yellows, I got what I really liked as tone in here, but it still needed some accent. So what I did is I put a ring of texture in here using the Sorby texture wheel, accented it, and then got out my black leather dye and my little brush, and with a little patience I went through and I did the one black ring, and it really set the bowl off. It looked like a completely different bowl once I finished up and added the black accents in there in addition to the color that came through. So color can be either completely dominant or it can be an accent as we go along, and sometimes you get things that are completely surprising. For example, one of the things that I like to do, this is ash, and it's got really an interesting color to it, and the grain underneath I like. What I did with this is I started with an ash vessel that I put black all over. Used the black dye, so this was completely black, and then I sanded it off until I was just left with the grain pattern. I said, well, that's a nice vessel, but I want to take it a step further, and I added the General Finish Empire Red stain over the top of that. And that's all that is, with a quick lacquer spray to give it that nice gloss. Now I never really liked using lacquer because I don't like the fumes, but I really like the way it looks. And if you put a lacquer finished vessel next to almost any other finished vessel, if somebody's looking at one to buy, or if they're looking at one to pick up and look at first, that lacquer is a stopper. It really gets attention. One of the other things that I was doing is playing with colors. And again, this is ash, same tree as this red one. But this time what I did is I started with blending colors, and we're going to do that in just a minute and see what kind of a result we get. But essentially you start with the light colors that you want, and you work on down to the darker ones. You can stay in different family groups if you like, and that works very well. For example, I wanted something warm and earthy and just different, and so I started with yellow. Moved to amber, moved to an orange, moved to a cinnamon color, moved to a little bit of red, and then some black accents, and put on with sponge until I got what I wanted. That was fun. Messy. It is messy, but it was a lot of fun. Or you can add going to the blue family. Sometimes the results that you get are unexpected. I will tell you, remember what happens when you put yellow down and then you add blue on top? What color do you have? It's green. So if you want something that gets you into the deep ocean, work with the yellows, work with the blues, and the greens began to emerge just like magic. Really an interesting way to approach life. Okay, a couple of others. Again, this is just poplar, and I wanted to experiment with turning a platter, but I didn't want to spend a lot of money on the wood, so I just glued up some poplar that I had in the shop, and I got pretty good glue joint, but it's just 3 pieces of poplar all glued up. And then I started working with the sponge, dabbing color on. And again, starting with the light colors, moving into the ambers and the earth tones, and finally ending up with just a few black accents in there to change the way. Some people like this, some people don't, but it does give you the combination in a platter of the natural wood finish. And I was really surprised at how well the poplar finished out in this. It has a real nice character to it. And then it took the finish very well. And this is a shellac finish. This is not lacquer, it's shellac. And it was a pain to really get worked out. I don't know why. Shellac is supposed to be easy. For me, it's not. It's very, very difficult. But after a lot of hand rubbing and a little bit of buffing, I like the finish that I got on that. And finally, before we do a hands-on, yes?
How many coats of lacquer?
I would guess that there are probably 6 or 7 coats of spray shellac on that bowl. And then I had to go back, and I found that I can do repairs in shellac finish by putting some other in and then rubbing it out, and that's what I did. I had a few little goobers in the finish that wouldn't go away, and I figured it out. Yeah,
the French polish effect.
Yeah, but it just takes some patience and sit down and turn on the music and play along. Talked about adding black to ash. This is just plain ash with a couple of strips of paduk, and black added to it, and then sanded off. And I think it pops pretty well. The ash has suntan just a little bit, you know, as it tends to do, turning down as it ages. I kind of like that effect. It's not quite as white as it was at first, and has some character, and it looks good when it's out on the table. It's not a food platter, but it's an accent type of platter, a charger that you can put Christmas decorations on or other things, and it works really well, but it's the black in that grain that really makes it go. Now, do you have to do black? Of course not. You could do red, you could do blue, you could do cinnamon color. I've got a cinnamon dye over here I'm going to talk about that I really like. It has a beautiful look to it. But enough of that. Let's kind of talk about details, shall we? Let's start with a vessel like this. And this little rascal came off of the same tree as this. Came off of the same tree as this. So you can tell that we've got quite a few different options that we can go with. What I do is I get what are called tack sponges. This is Decker Tack Sponge, fine pore sponge, multi-purpose sponge for cleaning tack and polishing leather. And then the one that concerns me, guys, it says cleaning small crevices in small and large animals. No, thank you. But for whatever it's worth, these are the, they look like big makeup sponges. But I don't want to use the whole thing to put on this finish, so I just cut them up into little squares or little chunks. I get about 6 of these miniature sponges out of every big one. So let's see what kind of damage we can do, shall we? Here's amber, general finishes. Amber is nice. Let's go with, what do we have? Oh, let's try a little orange just for fun.
Are these water-based?
These are all water-based. While I'm at it, there is a difference between wood stain and wood dye. I don't care for the stain. You might try it, but the wood dye gives me a lot better effect for the stuff that I'm using. It seems to get in and gives me the impact that I want. We're going to be using that. Here's Empire Red. I love Empire Red. It's this color. That's a lot different color than I get with the leather dye, like this. And I'll show you a bigger vessel with the leather dye here in a few minutes. Here's some cinnamon. Like I said, the cinnamon is excellent. And yellow. I a happy color. Okay, I have some stir sticks, I have an opener, and we're going to see how messy we can get. By the way, you see that I'm already wearing my Harbor Freight plastic gloves. They're not the blue things that they've sold for a long, long time. They're a clear vinyl glove right now. But I like the blue ones, and these aren't uncomfortable. They feel pretty good. Actually, I found that when I'm working on the lathe and when I'm doing sanding, if I put on a pair of these, my hands feel a whole lot better later in the session than if I'm working all that sawdust into my hands, and I just feel better. I don't know. Maybe I'm just getting old and cantankerous, but you might, if the sawdust is irritating your hands and you're getting cracks around the nails and stuff, this is your beauty tip for the day. Try turning with the vinyl gloves, and you might be surprised. Okay, this is yellow. Now, I would not normally put yellow stuff on any stuff, but I want something that's nice and happy, and I want something that'll add just a little bit of a sunshine glow somewhere on the vessel. Now, there's no science to this. This is all luck of the draw. If you're artistic, great. If you're not, it doesn't matter. But we're just going to spread some yellow. It's like spreading sunshine. La 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 la. Doesn't have to go around everything, doesn't have to be on everything. We're going to come back and we'll get to that. Rub it in, rub it dry, just little highlights here or there, and that's enough yellow. I did not bring my hammer over here to close that, so we'll be careful with those later on. And how about a little bit of orange accent, shall we? Orange is a happy color. I would never do anything all by its little lonesome in orange either. Not one of my standard things. However, I hear that in working with walnut, if you will use yellow stain or orange stain on the walnut before you finish, it will help even out the tones in the walnut and will make the deeper colors come through better. Haven't experimented with that a lot, but I do have a piece of walnut here on the top of this vessel that is stained red. And I was really surprised at the effect that that red stain had on that walnut. It's gorgeous. So don't do it on anything expensive or precious to you, but if you really want to try some color to change the tones of some of the things that you're working with, why not? Get a stick of walnut and see if it makes any difference. Okay, let's just accents. I feel like the guy that paints the trees, the happy trees. You know, Is this fun or what? Okay, now, the one thing that you want to avoid as you get further into this are hard, sharp edges. In other words, we're going to blend this down. But since all of these use the same solvent, they tend to melt into each other as you go along. And if you get one of those hard edges, all you do is take one of the other stains and rub it in that area, and it blends it. And that's all you're doing. You're just blending colors. I'm starting to like this already. How about we go with some amber? Amber sound good? Amber hasn't seen the light of day for a couple of months here. There we go. little bit goes a long way. Don't get the big Econo size can. Get the little ones. You may be saying, oh my gosh, what's he doing to that poor piece of wood? Or you might be saying, you know, I could get something done like that. Yeah, just a touch of amber down there. Do you see any of the different colors that are coming through in this yet? Now this is what I usually like to think of as my base color. And now I'm going to come in with the real colors on top of that. And these are going to be the ones that come through in highlights, little bursts or whatever. Let's go with, let's try the cinnamon. I like cinnamon. It's good in rolls, it's good. I could only find it in the big can when I needed it, so I've got a year's supply of cinnamon here, but it's pretty good stuff. Like I said, now we're getting down to the real colors. Now if you're fastidious, what you do is you get some soda straws and you use them as little dippers and put a few drops of this stuff into a small platter or little dish or something beside. Like you should never be dipping into the can of finish. I understand all that, but hey, there we go. Just add a little cinnamon up and around and blend. You guys want to know the really funny thing? I'm colorblind. I'm red-green colorblind. That's why I get some of the effects I get. I don't care what they are. I go more for the tones and things like that. My wife will say, oh, that's a nice green in there. Green, where'd that come from? Didn't intend it. I don't see it, but if you like it, I like it. Okay, a little bit of cinnamon. How about some Empire Red? Like I said, this is Empire Red all by its little lonesome up here. It's pretty good. I don't like it as well by itself. Oh, I've lost my little... Watch this. Tool construction. All in one. I don't like the Empire Red by itself as much as I like the leather dye, and I'll show you that pretty soon too. But that's just because they're a different color. And if you don't like what you're getting, you can always turn the whole thing black and it'll be fine. Now I've got some little rings down here in the bottom. I'm going to press that color in just a little bit so it can soak in all around there. We'll put on a little bit more. You know, when you go back over a color and you apply it again, it soaks in and it gets darker, right? And so what we'll do is hit 2 or 3 of these, and we're really getting 2 or 3 for the price of 1 as we go along.
Ben, have you ever colored anything from the inside out and let it soak through the wood?
You mean wicking through?
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah, I tell you, some of the things that I turn, you know, especially when you've got the end grain out there, you put anything on one side of it, it immediately comes roaring through on the other side. So, have I done it intentionally, Mel? No, but has it happened? Yeah, it has definitely happened. Okay, all I'm doing now is going back around and picking up a few of the spots that are kind of hard edge, and I'm knocking those down a little bit. Like so. Rub them in, and as you rub that red across the yellows, or even the red across the oranges or cinnamons, you start to get different colors, and it changes on you. Now, one of my favorite colors from General Finishes is their Ebony Dye Stain. This stuff is multi-purpose. I use it a lot. It's not nearly as messy as leather dye. Easier to control, and I recommend it highly. So let's see what happens if we play. Now a little bit goes a long way, so I'm going to start into this gently and see where we can go. Now let's come down here. And remember that these are going to change color a little bit as they dry down too. So just be aware that what you are seeing when it's all nice and wet and shiny may not be exactly what you're going to see later on. And again, if you don't like what you get, you can always do the whole thing black. And it'll be just hunky-dory. That's an old phrase from my grandmother. That was one of her favorites, I think, hunky-dory. Anybody else remember that one? And again, if you see a hard edge, that's what you really want to get rid of down the way. And could I have just done this whole thing in red, or could I have done the whole thing in cinnamon? Yeah, because that's kind of what we've got working here. Let's give it just a little darker upper here around the top. Okay, now let's have a look and see if we want to leave well enough alone for a little while. I'm going to tidy up here and let's see what we've got. You remember we started with that nice white, pretty plain, not much grain showing. And now what you've got is kind of a little vessel where you get some pops of the yellows and the oranges. I hope you can see them. And you see the grain pattern that's emerged here along the way. still see a hard edge or two where it's kind of smeared, so you just go back over and rub. And if you rub with a drier sponge, it even takes off some of that surface color and gets you back down to what's underneath. So you can add those little accents of orange or amber or yellow when you see them, and it smooths them all out. We doing okay? Okay, I think we'll leave that for a little while. I put the black on heavier up here around the rim to kind of shade that in. And I had already sprayed the inside of the vessel with black. Nobody needs to see the inside of every vessel you turn. And the black looks good when you do it that way. And so, that's where we are. I think that once we get some nice finish on the outside of that, it's going to look good. Now, what do you have to be concerned about? First of all, you need to let this dry completely. If you started to put finish on right now, remember that whatever solvent works on the dyes is also going to work to take the dyes up and to blend them and just make a general mess. And so try to find a surface finish that's not going to be competing with the type of stain or the type of dye that you use. For example, the leather dyes that I'll show you in a minute are alcohol-based. If you use a finish, a sealer that has alcohol as its solvent, then that sealer is going to lift the colors that you've got and start muddling them around and doing on your finished vessel what we've been doing on purpose with the sponges. So you got to be careful. If you're going to do that, start with a very, very light coat of the sealer and then just add it layer by layer, kind of dabbing it on, not spreading it around so that it soaks in but doesn't start smearing. If you have a different solvent, for example, if you're going to go to a lacquer finish and you're going to be lacquer sealing on top of water stain, it's pretty stable. But still be careful, because once you get that dye wet, if there's any particles floating around, they will tend to mess up. And it's ugly and it's messy as all get out. Now, what we've done is go through a bunch of cans of general finish dye stain. It's not horribly expensive, but when you start stocking it, it gets that way. One of the other things that you can get is something called an Intrinsic color collection. This is from Intrinsic Dye Stains. If you really want to play, this is a fun way to do it. This box was $35 worth. I don't know if that's in your budget or not. But what you get are these little bottles, and we have plum, we have sky blue, we have midnight blue, forest green, pear green is interesting, white, ruby, burnt orange. I used some of the burnt orange and the ruby working into this bowl. And that's what got me there. Here's flame. Flame is always good. Honey. Honey works very well. It's a lot like using the yellows and the oranges. Earth color and black. And so you've got them all right there in these little bottles. And you put these on with the sponges, just like I was showing you here, or even just little tissues, or well, I wouldn't say tissues, but paper towel pieces and things to rub them in. It works pretty well.
Are those concentrates, or?
Well, they're as concentrated as what's coming out of a can like this. Okay. You build up the color depending on how much you put on and how many times you go back over.
But you don't mix them with another?
You don't mix them with anything. You can. Actually, any of these can be mixed with the solvent to make them thinner. So that instead of getting a dye stain, what you're going to get is a wash of color that will be a lot lighter, a lot more subtle. And so you can play with that and just have fun.
Can you mix the colors?
You can mix the colors. That's one of the, in fact, you can mix any of these too. If you want, if you say, oh, I want green and I've got no green, no problem. Take some yellow, take some blue, you got green. You want it lighter green? Add more yellow. You want it really kind of a wash green? Add some solvent to it, and you're in business. Same thing with these. And I know that Woodcraft sells another brand of colors right now that are really, really popular. I can't remember the name of them. Some of you are probably using them now. I kind of like the effect that they're giving, but all of these colors are a little bit suspect in color retention if you put them out in the sunlight or something. And that's something we all worry about, especially not in the short term, but in the long term. If you do something for somebody, you don't want it washing out and turning gray when it should really be black. So be careful in the choices that you make. One of the best choices for just getting a good black is India ink. Messy as all get out, but it gives you a beautiful finish. My particular favorite right now are Feeblings Leather Dye. There are some other brands, but Feeblings seems to be the one that's available. Comes in a box like this, has this dauber inside of it, which is basically worthless, but for one coat of stuff you can probably play with it. I use them with small brushes, or I use them with the small foam brushes like this. And again, it's extremely thin. It's alcohol based, so basically you're putting alcohol with color in it on any of your vessels. Be sure that you put something down on the lathe. Be sure that you wear gloves because it will be very messy. And when I use the red leather dye down here, I have people constantly saying, did you hurt yourself? Are you okay? Because you go out in public, and even with gloves, you cannot avoid getting the red across the back of your hand or something, and it really looks like you hurt yourself. But again, same thing, you can mix colors. I've got yellow, I've got royal blue. Hey, I need some green, no problem, I can do that. And then my particular favorite, reds. Now Feeblings makes two different real reds. One is what they call pro dye, and one is just red. One's red, one's red pro dye. Now, logic would say, oh, I want the pro dye. I don't like it nearly as well as I like the red. And let me show you why. I'll be right back. Okay, we're back. This is a maple vessel that was finished only using the red dye. This is the red leather dye on maple segmented rings. I like the color, I like the finish I get, and it's finished with lacquer sealer and lacquer spray, and they all work and play beautifully together. This is the red that comes from the Empire Stain, which is a totally different color. And when it's out, you can really tell the difference between the two. The Pro Dye gives you a color that's very, very similar to the Empire Red. It's a darker color and just doesn't have the crisp, I'm going to say cellophane pop that the red dye does. And again, the more coats that you give, the darker it gets. So that if I had gone 2 more or 3 more coats of red dye on top of this, it's got 2 right now, just to smooth things out. If I had gone 2 or 3 coats more, this vessel would have been almost black red, deep, deep red. If that's the effect you want, that's fine. It goes more like this. But you lose that good, sharp, crisp red that's in there. Now, the other question that I get, I recommend these. I really, really do. They're fun. They're messy. They will get all over everything. Be careful. The foam brush is probably your best friend on that. And for some reason, wherever you put it, it seems to be running somewhere else. and it will penetrate right through wood. It will wick, it will bleed, so don't plan on it being very discreet. It likes to get around.
Where do you get the candy?
Tandy is good. Tandy doesn't always have the colors that you want, but you can go directly to the Feeblings site on the web and order directly from them, same price you're getting from anybody else, and they got every color that you want. The black is good. It works very well. I recommend them all. But we're gonna show you here in just a minute what happens when you start working with these things, because they can be very messy, and you just got to be careful. A couple of other things. This is Cellulose Sanding Sealer from Mylands. I really like it. It's really, really good stuff. But what you do is you mix it half and half with alcohol, denatured alcohol. Put it in a squeeze bottle. A little bit goes a long way. And when you're working at the lathe with any kind of small projects, you use a coating of this underneath a wax finished or a polished finish, or a coat of this even underneath the shine juice finish. And it just kind of solidifies everything. And if you've got some stain on there, this helps kind of nail it down before you do it. I don't know that this is any better than a lot of the other sanding sealers that you can get, but some of the sanding sealers have different solvents in them and will play differently with whatever stains you're using, so be careful. The other products that I'm using right now that I like a whole lot, one is Yorkshire Grit, and all this is, it's an abrasive paste. And so on this vessel over here, if we decided that we wanted to have just a nice finish like this, we can put the sealer on that vessel tomorrow after it's dried completely, very carefully put the sealer down, and then we use some of this abrasive paste. Basically it's wax with pumice or diatomaceous, yeah, in it, and some mineral oil. And you can make your own. This is expensive. This is $25 a jar. A little bit goes a long way, so it's not quite that bad. The other one that I've been using is Axe. Almost exactly the same. This is a little thicker than the Yorkshire Grit. That's good and that's bad. They even give you the formula on the back. It's beeswax, mineral oil, and Tripoli. That's it. Okay, I can live with that. Or after you apply that and get it all wiped down, you can use the Axe Polish and Restoring Paste, which is basically wax. It's mineral oil, beeswax, and carnauba wax. Or you can get the components and make your own and do whatever you want. But they are very, very convenient. I was gifted from a Turner friend a can of his brew. He made it himself. He made a whole pot of this stuff. And he says, there's more if you want it. I mean, there's plenty to go around. And so he's giving away these cans of abrasive wax. It's good. It's better than either one of those. So treasure, make your own. You'll be happy, and you can make a lot of your Turner friends happy by presenting them with your own home brew. One of the things I have used is the spray shellac. Like I said, I get mixed results. It's beautiful when it works right. And again, a nice, if you want to put the time in on it, this is just spray shellac. I'd recommend it, but have fun. I'm not going to use it any more than I have to. Okay, let's pause for just 2 or 3 minutes, and we will set up over there and show you where we're going to go.